Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Meta Cafe for your daily astrology, human design, and oracle energy report. Grab your cup of coffee. You see, I've got my stars with me today, or tea. Sit back and let's dig in. I hope everybody's doing well this very wonderful morning. It is a void of course moon, means things are moving slowly this morning. I feel like I'm in molasses or something where it's just like, slow motion. Yet I was ready early and was letting my mind take me into all kinds of wonderful spiritual places. And here we are in this broadcast, and I get to share some of the wonderful places my mind has been this morning. So today, the moon in Sagittarius is void of course all through the day. So if you thought today was going to be one of those days where you get a lot done, chances are that isn't going to happen. You might get a lot of desk cleaning done, organizing done, or meditating done, or mindfulness, or planning in the background. But anything that you expected to get done outwardly in the world might be delayed today. And that is because the moon is void, of course, until 2:27 a.m. PDT, so Pacific time tomorrow morning, and 5:27 a.m. East Coast time tomorrow morning, when the moon makes her move out of Sagittarius and into Capricorn. So tomorrow at 8 a.m. in our usual place, we will be meeting up with an astrologer named Diane Lawson, who recently wrote a book called Astrology of Relationships. And so we have been delving in a bit to relationships this week as we are looking ahead to what she might be sharing with us tomorrow. So I've been sort of laying the groundwork for everybody to understand where relationships are in their own chart. And of course, this is by no means a complete sort of rundown of what can happen because there's so much to it. I was thinking of, this is one of the things I was thinking about this morning, is in astrology and both human design, we get a lot of questions about relationships. When am I going to get married? When am I going to fall in love? Am I doomed to not have a relationship? Usually how do I get along in my relationship? Is it time for me to divorce this guy? Et cetera, et cetera. Or questions like, why do I always end up with the wrong person? Right? Or what's going on that I can't attract the right relationships to me? So we get a lot of questions like that from people when they're looking at having an astrology reading or a human design reading. Now, we've been dealing with astrology, but in human design, relationships are really interesting because remember, in human design, we're looking at the energetic you. I mean, in some ways, regular astrology or Western astrology is doing that same thing, but it's a little more, dare I say, a little more mechanical, right? It is Mars in the 5th house and Scorpio, and this is what that means. And this planet in a 90-degree angle to that planet, creating a challenge and, blah, blah, blah. So it's much more mechanical. When you look at human design, it's very much more energetic, and it takes into effect or into consideration the fact that we are energetic beings and that we are always attracting and repelling and always interacting with one another's energy. Much like you can feel the energy when you start doing, the movement of your hands together, or the movement when you do that with another person. Woo, here's a hand. Energy is something that we are always exchanging with one another. So in human design, it becomes much more about the quantum physics level of things, where we are being attracted to people who in some way complete us, right? To quote Jerry Maguire, I forgot what the character's name was, but you complete me makes total and complete sense in human design, because let me see if I can show you a chart here. I just kind of set everything aside over here this morning. Here's a human design chart of where the energies are right now. So when we look at this chart, you see all of these gates that are kind of hanging here, like right here. You see these two gates that are hanging? Hanging gates are gates that have energy at one end, but don't complete through the whole of the channel. And all of these gates in this particular chart are hanging because they don't have the unconscious part to it, because this was just a transit chart. So when we meet up with someone who has the other end in human design, we're drawn together and we complete a channel. Now, for good or ill, there's no rhyme nor reason to how it's going to be displayed, but you will feel a tight connection or a pull with that person. So sometimes that would mean you come together and you express the highest energy available through that channel, or sometimes you come together and it's the lower expression of the energy in that channel. Again, that just depends on you as individuals and as beings who are walking your own talk or not, such as the case may be. Now, in relationship, yesterday we started moving through the 5th house and the 7th house. And in the 5th and 7th house, what we find is that we are dealing with the relationships, what it is that you personally are looking for in your relationships. The 5th house was the house of love and romance, and the 7th house was the house of love and marriage or partnershiping. So if a romance begins in the 5th house and it carries through and lasts, then we move it to the 7th house where we see where it might end up in either marriage or a long-term connected relationship. And that's what we were working through yesterday. What do those houses mean? And then we also looked yesterday at the houses and the signs that could be on the houses. Where is everybody this morning? Where is my gang of girls? I feel like I'm talking to myself out here. I see 4 viewers, but was there a problem with people getting in this morning? Because there isn't anybody out there. It's so bizarre. But that's okay. I'll continue. But I actually pulled people's charts. So I was really hoping I had a couple of people out there with a chart that wanted me to look at, so we could, anyway. So relationships through the 5th and the 7th house, the sign on that house. And then we began a little bit of a discussion about what planets might be in those houses and how the planets color what is going on in those houses. So today we're going to look at the inner planets. There are, so many points and planets I could use, right? You know that I like to always look at the galactic center. I like to look at the Black Moon Lilith and Chiron and Ceres. So I didn't do those today. All I did were the inner planets. In the inner planets, I consider the Earth, right? So I've got the Sun, the Earth, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. So let's look at what it means if you have the Sun or in the 5th or the 7th house, right? So Sun in the 5th house is somebody who has a flair for drama, right? They love the idea of love. They love the idea of romance. They are fun-loving themselves. And so what they are often looking for is in a romantic partner is someone who can meet them there. Now, the 5th house Sun is very much Leo energy, right? The 5th house is ruled by Leo, and the Sun is the planet that rules Leo. So we've got a Leo flare, if you will. Okay, so if we have a Leo flare, then we also have a need to make ourselves the center of attention. And we would want then in a relationship, somebody who is going to make us the center of their world. Where is everyone? I can see the viewers, but I can't see you individually, and that's driving me crazy. I'm a crazy person here, and I can't even, I don't know. I can't even see where everybody is. It's so bizarre. I don't know if there's something wrong on my end or something wrong on Be Live's end or Facebook's end. Perhaps it's all the new changes going on in GDPR and all that kind of stuff where we're not allowed to see people. I don't know. Or it's the void of course moon. That's what it is. To see if I could sit here and talk to myself for 20 minutes every morning. All right. So if you are someone who has the Sun in the 7th house, you feel complete with a partner, right? The Sun is looking for its twin or its twin flame or its soul partner. What's that other word? Soulmate. Right? You're looking for that soulmate relationship. You love to share. You want to share of yourself and you want to share with someone. And I'm Sorry, I thought maybe people were telling me what it was that's going on out there in Be Live world. So the sun in either the fifth house or the seventh house really puts a lot of focus on relationships for you. And I didn't have an example this morning. Let's see, did I? I do have an example. Mimi, if you're out there listening this morning, I have an example of, I'm going to hide your birth information so no one can really see your identity stuff. There we go. But if you look at Mimi's chart here, Mimi, and I feel comfortable sharing this because the people whose charts I am sharing have told me in the past to use them as guinea pigs if I need to. And that's why I feel comfortable doing this. So Mimi is a great example of someone who has a fifth house. Not only does she have a fifth house sun, but she also has a fifth house Leo. So Leo is on the cusp of her fifth house and the sun is in her fifth house. She is all about the romance, right? She is all about the idea of love and romance and being in love, but it doesn't always have to play out necessarily. I know she's an artist, and it looks, every time I see her things, I think about like the romance of color, the romance of those vibrant textiles that she puts together. And she's been working on a project that she's been showing on Facebook lately where she's trying to, I think it's called organic dyeing, and some of the fabric things that she's been making recently are just gorgeous. So maybe artistic flair coming through here, the romance in art, the romance in how I can express myself, the love of expressing through color, through light, through drama, etc. And her seventh house is in Libra. So here is also an idea that of relationship, wanting to be bonded, wanting to be in relationship, but she's also got her Neptune in almost on top of the descendant. And Neptune can be highly spiritual here, but it can also be a little bit of a problem for some people because they're looking for that ideal partner. And if they don't find that ideal partner, they may never bond. They may never come together with that partner. Or they may come together with a partner and then they experience the worst of the worst, right? The partner falls apart in their view based on realism as opposed to what the ideal was, right? You meet this man, he's your knight in shining armor, and you think he's all that. And then you get married or you get into that serious long-term relationship, and he isn't that way at all. And then you have to look at, how did I idealize this person? But at any rate, relationships for someone with a Neptune in the seventh house, and she's also got Saturn at the other end. So that's a whole nother story. We'll maybe deal with that tomorrow when we talk about, or on Friday, we'll talk about the outer planets. But at any rate, so we can see then if we have different planets in the houses, it flavors what it is we're doing. Now, when we have I use the Earth, right? I was talking about that. If the sun is in Gemini, let's say, then your Earth is in the opposing sign, which is Sagittarius. Mimi, her sun is in Leo, so her Earth is in Aquarius. And where the Earth is then, if you have the Earth in your fifth house, so her Earth would be in her fifth house, 11th house. So she may actually meet people through groups or, being introduced to someone from a group that she's a part of, whether it's an art group, whether it's a spiritual group, whether it's the PTA, whatever it is, right? She's going to meet people through the groups. And in the Earth, then in the fifth house is often the idea of feed me, give me flowers, get in the dirt with me. If you're able to meet me in where I live and do what I do and get involved with me in a very practical, physical manner, then I'm really going to enjoy being in relationship with you. The Earth in the seventh house is often looking for partnership, meaning marriage, meaning bonding. They're looking for the deeper connection, right? Because you think about your feet firmly planted on the ground. It is the person meeting the Earth And then that drives the person meeting the person and being bonded to that person, being in love with that person, but yet being bonded in a deeper way. When we look at Mercury in the fifth house, remember, the house of love and romance. And Mimi, you also happen to have your Mercury in the fifth house. Love it. Mercury in the fifth house loves pillow talk, the sweet nothings, or the deeper soul-bearing kind of talk with someone. They find that communication, soft voices, whispers even, over a glass of champagne or, bonbons, whatever, to be very romantic. It's setting the stage for romance, has to do with how we talk to one another in Mercury in the fifth house. With Mercury in the seventh house, they want to be able to communicate through everything. So you want a partner, if your Mercury's in the seventh house, you want a partner that is going to be willing to talk to you and to listen to you. And I guess the lesson for you as the talker is that you also need to be able to listen to the other person. They want to communicate through everything, and they want to feel heard. And that means they're the people that are going to want to talk through conflict. They're going to want to talk about plans. They're going to want to talk about how they feel, depending on the sign, of course, and what their goals are, what their dreams are, etc. So if you are someone with Mercury in your fifth or seventh house and you meet up with someone who doesn't like to talk, that could be a problem for you. It could be you doing all the talking and the other person just not particularly listening, or perhaps they're listening. But it's not a two-way communication when that's what you're really after, is that real thought of being in communication with one another. Venus in the fifth and the seventh house. Now, Venus is the planet that we really think of as the planet ruling relationships. She rules love and romance and beauty and harmony and peace and all those bonding, yummy feelings that we get when we are with our beloved. She really is the one that asks the question in the chart, how do you want to be loved? Right? Wherever she is in your chart tells you how it is that you want to be loved. And if she's in the fifth house, she's in love with love. She's in love with romance. She wants the flower, the champagne. She wants to be your everything. She wants you to get down on your knee and recite the sonnet and the song. She wants you to write her a song. And she wants to be loved, right? She wants to be physically loved, but she's really very much wanting that romantic love. And with Venus in the seventh house, they carry that need for romance and love into partnership. So a Venus in the seventh house cannot take away the love and romance just because we're now in a committed long-term partnership or relationship. And Venus is also the ruler of money. So often Venus in the fifth or seventh house is attracted to a partner who has money, who's made themselves, who has sort of a solid standing financially. Whether that means, if it's negatively influenced, that could be gold digger energy, but that's not really Venus's style. She just is attracted to someone who's been able to achieve that level of stability, but also is able to hold on to the ideals of love and romance. She's in love with love. And now if you are a man and you're listening to the show today, then this represents, Venus in your chart represents the kind of woman that you are looking for. And so if she's whatever sign she happens to be placed in are kind of the traits that you're looking for. So if Venus in a man's chart is placed in Gemini, perhaps you're looking for someone who's fun, who has who's witty, who's the life of the party, or who's very communicative. If you're a man and you have Venus in Cancer, you want that mama person. You want that person you want that woman who's going to take care of you, who's going to feed you, who's going to make sure that all of your needs are met. So that's kind of what we look at in a man's chart, where Venus is the kind of woman that you might be attracted to. Conversely, in a woman's chart, Mars is the important planet. Mars is the one that's going to show you what kind of man you are looking for, what masculine energy you're looking for. Mars in the fifth house is looking for adventure, is sexual, is daring. So you will be attracted to a partner who personifies that type of thing, right? You're looking for the Indiana Jones kind of person. That romance for you is lived on the run. It Bonnie and Clyde style, not necessarily, but someone who is going to represent for you that excitement and that daring flair, that dashingness. If you have Mars in the seventh house, it is the sexual energy that really forms the basis for this relationship. It is the physicality of the relationship. And there could be the potential for conflict erupting in the relationship if you find a partner who isn't physically connecting with you. And unless Mercury is well placed, you will also find someone who is in conflict with your way of communicating. So it can be a problem, right? Or it can be a complete blessing. So for women, then Mars represents the man that you're looking for, or what kind of masculine energy would be very fulfilling for you. So if you have someone, if you have, let's see if I can look, who else's chart did I pull today? And I can't tell who's listening. So I'm hoping, like Roseanne, I pulled your chart. And I know Roseanne always likes it if I use her chart. So I felt comfortable doing this. Her Mars is in Libra, but it's also conjunct her natal Uranus. So she's looking for relationship. She's looking for a strong male energy that wants to bond. But there has to be some excitement in that relationship because, sometimes Libra energy gets into that comfort mode. They try to be balanced, right? They try to be in harmony. Sometimes they're at the ugly end of that, right? They get to that real, we call my husband when he's a Libra. When he's out of balance, he becomes Chicken Little, like the sky is falling, the whole world is falling apart. And when he's in balance, everything is nice and smooth. And he's the Libra we come to know and love. And then at other times, that pendulum swings the other way. Yikes. Well, in a way, Roseanne, this is the kind of relationships you may have been attracting to you unbeknownst to yourself, right? People either who are deadpan, right, that don't have that up and down. But what you're really looking for is an exciting partner, someone who's going to meet you right where you are, who maybe is going to match you at your depth, who's going to give you a run for your money. And anybody else may end up being too easy for you to walk over, maybe not exciting, somebody you just tolerate, but that you don't really connect with. So different planets and different things. Let's see, Mimi, your Mars in Pisces. Well, now that sort of backs up. That kind of backs up your Neptune in your seventh house, Mimi, because Mars in passionate, but let's say compassionate Pisces, you're looking for maybe the more soul mate kind of relationship, someone that if you're attracted to men, then you're going to be attracted to those very spiritual men, to the painters, to the poets, to the dancers, to the men that are highly creative, who are very much in command of their feminine side as well as their masculine side. So that would be your ideal relationship with a man. But yeah, interesting, because your Mars is in the 12th house. So there's also a sense that maybe he's unattainable. Eek. So anyway, well, that gives us some ideas then about what the relationships look like through what different planets, the inner planets, might do in a relationship to change the flavor of that fifth or seventh house. Now, if you're someone that has no planets in your fifth house or in your seventh house, don't despair. That doesn't mean that you're not meant to be in relationships or that you're boring. Not at all. Because it does. If we look, I was going to pull Michelle's chart this morning, but her chart's too much like mine. So I decided, no, I did pull it. Here it is. So in Michelle's chart, she has her seventh house beginning in the sign of Capricorn. So she too is looking for a solid, stable foundation from which to build a relationship. She wants a man who's in his authority. She doesn't want somebody that um, isn't going to be able to stay on their own 2 feet, right? She wants somebody that's going to be able to work hard, take care of her and her daughter, and any other kids that may come from the relationship. So she's looking for that solid foundation. The only other planet she has in the seventh house is the black moon Lilith, and that brings up a shadow, which is a little bit different story. But if we let's pretend the black moon Lilith is not in her seventh house. It was just an empty seventh house. What we would still do and be able to do to see what she's really looking for is look at the ruling planet of the sign on the seventh house. If the sign on the seventh house is Capricorn, then we're looking at a Saturn planet. That Saturn is the planet that rules Capricorn. So we'll want to look at what the disposition is of Saturn in her chart. And we find Saturn in Cancer. So a part of that solid stability that she's looking for in a partner is also this nurturing quality. One, he wants to be nurtured by her, right? He wants to be nurtured. But on the other hand, she's a Leo. And so she wants to be nurtured. She wants somebody that's going to come after her, right? That wants to feed her, clothe her, take care of her, wine her, dine her. But more than that, to really help her build a home and a family. And that solid foundation that she's looking for comes when she feels nurtured in the relationship. So these are the little tidbits that we can pick up as we look through a person's chart. And we can see how some of these different planets color what you're looking for in relationships, as well as the type of partner that you would be most suited for. Now, there are also a couple of other things that we do with relationships in astrology. We have 2 kinds of charts. Besides looking at someone's birth chart and determining, well, this is the kind of partner you'd be best suited for and that kind of thing, we can pull a chart called synastry. And synastry, I should have pulled one. Dang it, I didn't. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow, Friday, and I'll show you 2 different types of relationship charts. So essentially, synastry is taking on the inner wheel will be your chart, let's say, and on the outer wheel is going to be your partner's chart. So of course, we need your partner's birth time, birthplace, and birth date in order to do this. And what we see then is how planets in your chart are placed in their chart. And from that, we can take a look at how you guys are drawn together, what you love about each other, what you don't love about each other, etc., how you are drawn together. And we can do this in every kind of relationship, right? We can do this with business partnerships. We can do this with friends. We can do this with family members, and we can do this with lovers. And when we do that, we get a sense. I love doing synastry, actually, because it really gives us a sense of what it is that you and I are called together to do or to be. And we can see what the challenges are going to be likely that crop up. We're going to see the stressed areas. We're going to see the delightful areas. We are really going to understand a whole lot about the basis of this relationship. Now, the second type of chart is also very informative, and it's called a composite chart. And what it does is it takes the information from your chart and the other person's and puts it together and makes a whole new chart. And that chart then becomes the chart of the relationship. So it'd be like me, taking my chart and taking my husband's chart. And when we put it together, the relationship forms its own chart. And from that, we can read, what does it mean in the coming together of those 2 people? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the problems that might occur, the challenges, and how are things going to work? What's the main focus or the thrust of the relationship? What's the shadow? What's the wound? I mean, everything that we can see in your natal chart becomes apparent in the composite chart as it represents the relationship itself. So both of those charts really interesting when we look at astrology. Now in human design, let's look at the gene keys for a minute, because the gene keys is really unique in this whole idea of relationships. In that Richard Rudd, the author of the book Gene Keys, which I just so happen to have here, I would recommend this book for everybody. Richard Rudd, Gene Keys, Unlocking the Higher Purpose Hidden in Your DNA. And no, he does not pay me to say this. I just do this because I love this book. But it is not, look how thick, right? This is not a book that you read from cover to cover, right? You just don't do that. You'll go bonkers. But this is a book that you use as a contemplation. And I always recommend to people, start with your sun sign, right? The gate at your sun. In my case, the gate is gate 12. And so that was the very first gate or first gene key I ever read about, was the 12. What does that mean for me? What's the shadow? What's the gift? And what's the siddhi? And, sit with that information. Don't just try to read that book cover to cover. You will miss the message, I swear to you. It's much like the Bible or A Course in Miracles or any of those kind of books. You really can't just read them cover to cover without taking some time to contemplate. So sure, if you wanted to start with Gene Key 1 and go through 64, in some ways you could do that, but not just for reading purposes. It's meant as a contemplation. But so Richard, in the Gene Keys, he put together something called the hologenetic profile. And I was working with mine this weekend, and the book's in the other room, so I can't even really show you what a hologenetic profile looks like. Actually, I could, but that would give away some information for people that aren't online here to tell me yes or no. So the hologenetic profile is broken down into 3 parts. The first part is called the activation sequence. And the activation sequence is just made up of your conscious sun and conscious earth, and your unconscious sun and your unconscious earth. It's basically giving you the 4 pillars of who you're here to be and how you're meant to be, your authentic self. It is in human design what we would call your incarnation cross. But he takes it deeper. He goes to the next level, which is called the Venus sequence. And the Venus sequence is all about how you are in relationships. And each of the keys, or the gene keys, i.e. the gates in human design that sit at these particular places in your chart, point to you in relationships. And he breaks it down. I mean, it's broken down into the 9 months of you being in the womb, the first 7 years of life, the next from age 7 to 14, and up all the way to age 21, I believe it is. And in all of that become the very things that have laid the balance, the template, if you will, of who it is that you're here to be in relationship. It's fascinating. And it's a little unnerving too, because some of those things, of course, are totally and completely out of your control, right? You really aren't controlling what was going on in your outer world when you were in your mother's womb, yet the very experiences that your mother was having, or that you were intuiting from being within the womb, are also coloring who you are in relationships right now. So if you think about your mom and dad when you were in the womb, what if they were always arguing and fighting? What part of that did you absorb into your being? And all of that becomes unveiled in the Venus sequence of the gene keys. And this is, you can go to Gene Keys. It's not genekeys.com. I think it's thegoldenpath.com. Look that up. Just Google the Golden Path and see if you can find it from there. And you can get your hologenetic profile free. And I am thinking of doing some classes and pulling the hologenetic profiles apart, but I need to make sure people understand enough about human design first. And because it's really fascinating to see the gene keys and the depth to which it can take you into really knowing who you are. Now, I said there were 3 paths. The third path is called the Pearl, or the Pearl sequence, and it's all about your path to prosperity. And it's a shorter version, and it is very profound. Something interesting I discovered over the weekend while I was on this thing looking deeper into the gene keys was that all last week we were talking about the gene key 41 or the gate 41 in human design, which is the gate of fantasy. And it is the place where dreams never get in the shadow. Dreams never make it to reality. And they just kind of stay up here in this nebulous idea. And then, of course, we become more angry or upset or frustrated, depending on your human design, because our dreams are not becoming manifest, right? And I realized that part of the Pearl sequence, the final dispositor in my Pearl sequence, is the gate 41. Too weird. I didn't even realize that until the weekend. I don't even know what it means yet necessarily for me personally, but I thought that was interesting how we are moving through things sometimes in a very unconscious way or intuitive way. I wouldn't want to say really unconscious, because it was probably very intuitively placed in my path so that I would have to look at it. And I did. All right. So the gene keys show us the deeper sense of who we are and who we are meant to be in relationships. And in some ways, the relationships, which we know are mirrors for us, what are those relationships showing us, right? What do they show us? When I look in the mirror of my friends, my family, my husband, my enemies even, what am I seeing reflected back at me? Because everything about that shows you something to be true about you, something you have a judgment on if it's not so pleasant, but also something that you value in yourself if you're seeing it out there in others. So there's a lot to be learned from our relationships, much more, I think, than what I can give you in a 15 to 20 minute class in the morning. But we are attempting to break this down a bit so we can go through here. So tomorrow will be the day when Diane Lawson is with us at 8:00. Have your questions ready, right? I'm sure she'll be happy to ask questions. I'm really hoping that tomorrow I can see people's comments out there, because today I can't, and that's really annoying. So hopefully we'll be able to interact that way. And if not, well, we'll figure out something. Maybe you guys can email me questions ahead of time, or I can be on Messenger while she's talking and we can get questions answered. Anyway, I'm not even seeing we are here. So Londa's saying that she's out there. Mimi's saying she's out there. So I'm really glad that you guys are out there, and I really wish I could see you. I can just see the number of viewers. I can't really tell who's there. Harumph. But that's okay. Maybe when I go back in later, I can see your comments and questions and I can answer them for you. In the meantime, enjoy this void of course day with its weirdness and its quietness. And I'll see you tomorrow morning, 8:00 with Diane Lawson for Astrology of Relationships. Love you all. Mwah! Bye for now.